Okay, so this is Algebra 1 8.6 Notes Part 2. So before we were just factoring. Now we're going to solve by factoring. And so to solve by factoring, you have to have them equal to 0. So we're going to start this problem off with x squared plus 6x minus 27 equal 0. We're going to do the same thing we did in the first video. What will multiply to give me negative 27 and add to give me 6. So we have 1's going to be positive, 1's going to be negative because they multiply to give me a negative. So 1 and 27. 2 doesn't work. 3 does. 3 and 9. 4 doesn't work. 5 doesn't work. 6 doesn't work. 7 doesn't work. 8 doesn't work, but 9 does, and it's already in the column. So since they multiply to give me a negative, but they add to give me a positive, then that means my bigger number is positive, my smaller number is negative. So we get 26, and we get 6 here. So our numbers are negative 3, positive 9. So you have x minus 3, x plus 9. And we have to bring down our equal to 0. Now, just like in lesson 8.5, you guys know how to do this now when we solve by factoring. You have to set each parenthesis equal to 0. So x minus 3 equals 0. X plus 9 equals 0, and you solve. So x equals 3, and x equals negative 9. So we have negative 9, comma 3 is our answer. Number 11, same thing, you need to subtract your 70 over. So we have x squared minus 3x minus 70 equals 0. Erase some of this. We'll make our t-chart. We want something that'll multiply to give us negative 70 and add to give us negative 3. So it has lots of, well, maybe not lots, but it has more factors than the ones we have done before. So some things that you could do here is some of you may be able to come up with in your head what will multiply to give you negative 70, add to give you negative 3 without doing a lot of math or listing a chart. Now eventually when you get to Algebra 2, I want you to be done with the t-chart and be able to come up with these in your head. So we can list these together. We can still go 1 and 70. So then you go 2 and 35. 3 doesn't work. Then you try 4. 4 doesn't work. Then you try 5. We know 5 will work because it ends in a 0. So 5 and 14. So then you try 6. 6 doesn't work. We know 7. Well, 7 and 10. So then you try 8. 8 doesn't work. You try 9. 9 doesn't work. And 10's already in the column, so we know we're finished. So they multiply to give us a negative 70. So we know 1's negative, 1's positive. They add to give us a negative, so we know our bigger number is negative. So we have negative 69, negative 33, negative 9, and negative 3. So we know our numbers are 7 and negative 10. So x plus 7, x minus 10. So now when you set each one of them equal to 0, x plus 7 equals 0, x minus 10 equals 0, and you solve them, you get the answer of x equals negative 7 and x equals 10. So we have two answers because it's a quadratic. So number 12. Number 12, I want you to pause the video. I want you to try number 12. And then once you're finished, push play and check your work. Okay, so hopefully you have worked number 12. I have it multiplies to give you negative 18 and adds to give you 3. So you have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6, 4 doesn't work, 5 doesn't work, and 6 is already there. They multiply to give me a negative, so 1 has to be positive, 1 has to be negative. But when they add, they give me a positive 3. So my smaller number has to be the negative one. So I get 17, I get 7, and I get 3. So we have x minus 3, x plus 6. So I have x minus 3 equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0. So we know that our answer is negative 6 and positive 3 because x equals 3 here and x equals negative 6 here. Okay, let's go to 13. Okay, so on 13, you would underline the thing. You've already read the problem, hopefully. You'll underline the things that are important. So on this one, you have underline that it's a parallelogram. It's 18 centimeters, its height of the parallelogram is 18 centimeters less than its base, and it has an area of 175. So to find the area of the parallelogram, we know the area is equal to base times height, and we know that the height is 18 centimeters less than, tricky word, than its base, so it's base minus 18. And it says our area is 175. Well, if we can substitute all of that into this formula here, we would have 175 is equal to b my base, because I don't know that, but I do know my height. My height is b minus 18, so I can substitute that in for h. So b minus 18. So we can distribute here, and we get 175 is equal to b squared minus 18b. Ooh, this looks like one of the problems we've been working this week here, and we can subtract 175 so that it equals 0. So I have b squared minus 18b minus 175 is equal to 0. Then I'm going to factor that. So you can make your t-chart, or you can play around with your calculator, and you can come up with numbers that will multiply to give you negative 175 and add to give you negative 18. So we know that one's positive, one's negative. The bigger number has to be negative. So pause the video, play with your calculator a little bit, trying to figure out that number, and then when you come back, I'll tell you. So hopefully you've figured out the number, and you're not just not pausing it so you can get the answer from me. Hopefully you've already done that. The answer was negative 25 and positive 7. Negative 25 times positive 7 gave me negative 175, and they add to give me negative 18. And so when I solve this, I get b minus 25 is equal to 0, and b plus 7 is equal to 0. So up here I get b is equal to 25, and b is equal to negative 7. Now, when I'm writing my final answer, though, something's not quite right. My final answer would say 25 and negative 7, but let's go back and talk about the problem. We're talking about the height of a parallelogram, and we want to know when we plug these in, if I plug in negative 7, I'm going to end up with a negative height. Well, I can't have a negative height, so negative 7 cannot be what my base is. My base has to be 25, so when I plug it in and get 25 minus 18, I get 7. So my height is 7, and my base is 25. Okay, so what I want you to do is pause the video, read number 14, and then we're going to talk about number 14 once you have finished. So hopefully you've underlined everything that was important in 14, and you are ready to work it. So what they describe here is they describe a poster, and then at the top, first of all, don't judge my drawing here. I'm not the best artist. So at the top of the poster, they say is 4 inches long, and the rest of the poster, so the rest of this, is 2 inches wider, or 2 inches longer than the width. So we're adding 2 to the width for the rest of this. Then we have the width down here. Well, the whole thing together is 616 square inches. So when you set it up, we know it's going to equal 616, in that we have the width times the width plus 6, because w plus 2 plus 4 would be w plus 6. So what you need to do is distribute your w. So w squared plus 6w is equal to 616. Now subtract your 616 over, and then you need to factor it. So I want you to pause the video right now and come up with your factoring of your numbers. So these numbers were a little difficult. Hopefully you could play around with your calculator and figure them out there. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what they are. They were w plus 28 and w minus 22. So when I set each parenthesis equal to 0 and solve, I get that the width is either negative 28 or the width is positive 22. Well, we know the width can't be negative 28 because we can't have a negative width, so we cross that out, and the width of our poster is 22. And that's all they're asking for here. So this concludes 8.6 notes.